The clearance sale, Chapter 1. The sign in Harold Finch's window read, "Everything must go 75% OFF," in letters so desperate they practically bled into the glass. It had been there for 3 weeks, slowly fading in the autumn sun that slanted down Mercer Street like God's own spotlight on failure. Harold stood behind the counter, watching dust motes perform their ancient ballet in the afternoon light, and wondered not for the first time if books could sense when they were being abandoned. The shop smelled like it always did. Old paper, older coffee, and the faint ghost of his late wife's perfume that he'd convinced himself still lingered in the self-help section. Marion had loved self-help books. She'd read approximately 473 of them before the aneurysm took her last April, which Harold thought proved something about the universe's sense of humor, though he couldn't quite articulate what. "Dad, we've got another one." Junior's voice drifted from the back room, followed by the kid himself, all 6'2" of him, carrying a box labeled occult/paranormal, handle with care, in Marion's careful handwriting. At 18, Harold Jr. had his mother's dark eyes and his father's unfortunate nose, plus a work ethic that made Harold feel simultaneously proud and guilty. The boy should have been at college, chasing girls in mediocre grades, not helping his old man liquidate a dying bookstore. "Handle with care," Harold muttered, taking the box. "Your mother wrote that as a joke, you know. She had a whole system. The romance novels got open with caution. The cookbooks got may contain calories. The business books got may contain bullshit." Junior finished, smiling. "I remember, Dad. They didn't talk about Marion much. It hurt too much, like pressing on a bruise that never quite healed. Instead, they moved books, thousands of them, preparing for the clearance sale that would either save them or finish what the Amazon algorithm had started." The bell above the door chimed an actual bell, brass. Another one of Marion's touches, and Mrs. Chen shuffled in, followed by the October wind and a scatter of brown leaves. She was 70 if she was a day, dressed in a pink cardigan that had seen better decades, and she had the look of someone who'd outlived 3 husbands and planned to outlive several more. "Harold," she said, her voice like gravel in a blender, "you still got that book about poisons?" Harold blinked. "I'm sorry, what? Poisons? Toxicology? My book club is reading Agatha Christie, and I want to know if she got it right." Junior appeared from the back, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Third aisle, top shelf, green cover, the Poisoner's Handbook." Mrs. Chen nodded and disappeared into the stacks, humming something that might have been James Brown or might have been a hymn. "Hard to tell with Mrs. Chen. That's a weird one," Junior muttered. "She's in a book club. They're all weird." Harold glanced at the ceiling, where a rhythmic thumping suggested Aunt Delia was awake. His aunt, technically Marion's aunt, but Harold had inherited her along with everything else, lived in the apartment above the shop, and hadn't come down in 3 years. Junior brought her meals. Harold brought her books. She sent down lists, written in cramped, spidery handwriting, demands really. More westerns, more mysteries, nothing with sad endings, no books about dying, no books about grieving, nothing after 1985. The last request was the strangest, but Harold had learned not to question Delia's logic. The woman was 91 and sharp as a box of tacks. If she didn't want anything published after Reagan's first term, who was Harold to argue? The clearance sale started on a Thursday because Thursdays were slow, and Harold figured if he was going to fail, he might as well fail quietly. He'd place an ad in the Millbrook Gazette circulation, declining, posted on Facebook, engagement, depressing, and put up flyers at the coffee shop, the library, and the dive bar down the street called the Rusty Nail, where the regulars were too drunk to read but might remember later. By 9 a.m., There was a line, not a long line. This wasn't a new iPhone launch, but a respectable line of 15, maybe 20 people, stretching from his door past the print shop next door, where Sister Clotilda stood in the window like a penguin-shaped sentinel, watching the proceedings with what Harold assumed was either approval or judgment. Hard to tell with nuns. Sister Clotilda managed the print shop, a relic from another era called Mercer Street Press, which mostly printed church bulletins, wedding invitations, and the occasional wanted poster for the Millbrook PD. She was in her early 60s, built like a fire hydrant, and had a voice that could strip paint. Harold had seen her make a grown man cry once for using the Lord's name in vain near her storefront. Mercer Street itself was narrow, one of those downtown streets that city planners had forgotten to widen when cars got bigger. The buildings pressed together like old friends sharing secrets, and the traffic, when there was traffic, moved at a pace that could charitably be called leisurely and accurately be called infuriating. Ready? Junior asked, his hand on the door lock. Harold took a breath. The shop looked good, he had to admit. They'd organized everything by genre and discount level. 75% off on most stock, 90% on the stuff that hadn't moved since the Clinton administration. The cash register was ready. The coffee was brewing. Marion's presence felt particularly strong this morning, as if she was watching from somewhere in the fiction section, probably judging his pricing strategy. Ready, Harold said. Junior unlocked the door. What followed was chaos, but the polite kind, the kind where people said, "Excuse me," while elbowing each other for the last copy of something they'd never heard of 5 minutes ago. Harold had worried they'd overestimated demand, but apparently the combination of bookstore and going out of business triggered something primal in the human psyche, some prehistoric urge to gather and hoard. Mrs. Shen bought 14 books, including the Poison Manual. A college kid with a man bun bought everything they had on Eastern philosophy, paid in crumpled 20s, and asked if they had any titles on consciousness expansion. A woman in a green dress that cost more than Harold's car bought their entire cooking section, $300 worth of recipes she'd probably never use. And then there was Derek. Derek was 23, white, and nursing an ambition to become Millbrook's first famous rapper. A goal that faced several significant obstacles, including the fact that Millbrook's population was 65% retired. The local radio station only played country music, and Derek couldn't really rap. But God love him, he tried. He showed up wearing a FUBU jersey from 2001 and bought every music biography they had. James Brown, Tupac, Biggie, even a bootleg unauthorized biography of Vanilla Ice that Harold had been trying to unload since 2009. Derek said, his accent somewhere between suburban Connecticut and a Compton he'd only seen on YouTube, "Learn the craft, you feel me?" "I feel you," Harold said, because it seemed easier than the alternative. By lunch, they'd sold $2,000 worth of books, which was more than they'd sold in the previous 2 months combined. Junior manned the register while Harold restocked, hauling boxes from the back room, his lower back screaming protests that he ignored. At 56, Harold was too old for manual labor and too young to retire, stuck in that miserable middle ground where everything hurt but nothing was technically broken. "Dad," Junior called. "Nellie's here." Harold looked up to see his daughter slouching through the door, 15 years old and committed to the aesthetic of not giving a shit. She wore black jeans with holes in them that cost $100, a T-shirt advertising a band that had broken up before she was born, and an expression of such profound boredom that Harold felt tired just looking at her. "Hey, Nell," he tried. Don't call me that. She didn't look at him, already on her phone, thumbs moving in that incomprehensible rhythm of teenage communication. Junior said you needed help. This was news to Harold, but he glanced at his son, who shrugged with one shoulder, a gesture that said she was home alone and getting into trouble without saying anything at all. Sure, Harold said. You can help reorganize the... I'm not doing manual labor, I'll work the register. She wouldn't, not really. She'd stand near the register radiating resentment, occasionally glancing up from her phone to give customers a look that said I'd rather be literally anywhere else, which Harold supposed was at least honest. Now he had been difficult since Marion died, but difficult was like calling a hurricane breezy. She'd been arrested twice, once for shoplifting, once for vandalism, and was currently on probation, a fact that made Harold's chest tight with a mixture of fear and failure. The afternoon wore on. More customers, more sales. A man in a suit bought their entire true crime section, his arms full of serial killers and cold cases. A woman with a rosary hanging from her rearview mirror, Harold, could see it through the window, beads catching the light bought every religious text they had, her face serene in a way that suggested either deep faith or heavy medication. A kid, couldn't have been more than 12, bought a book about Charles Manson. Harold almost said something, almost asked where his parents were, but the kid paid in cash and left before Harold could form the words. Besides, who was he to judge? Harold had read Helter Skelter at 14 and turned out fine, give or take several decades of low-grade anxiety. By 5 p.m., the shop looked like a tornado had gone through it, which, in a sense, it had. Empty spaces on shelves, books scattered and reshelved in approximate order, the cash register drawer fat with bills. Junior counted while Nellie scrolled, and Harold stood at the window watching Mercer Street settle into evening. The sun was setting, that particular autumn sunset that turned everything gold and amber, the kind of light that made even dying downtown districts look almost beautiful. Across the street, Sister Clotilda was locking up the print shop, her movements precise and economical. She caught Harold watching and gave him a nod that might have been approval or might have been a warning. Again, hard to tell with nuns. $3,416, Junior announced, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. Dad, we did it. One day's sales, Harold said, but he was smiling. Let's not start planning the yacht purchase. I'm planning a yacht, Nellie muttered without looking up. With a helicopter pad? Plan away, kiddo. They closed at 6, locked the door, and Harold poured himself 2 fingers of moonshine from the mason jar he kept under the counter. It was Kentucky moonshine. Not the real backwoods stuff, but it did the job. Junior declined the kid didn't drink. Another way he was better than his father and Nellie was too young, or at least too supervised at the moment. To your mother, Harold said, raising the jar toward the ceiling, toward Delia upstairs, toward wherever Marion was now. She'd have hated this circus. She'd have loved it, Junior corrected. She loved controlled chaos. That was true. Marion had thrived on organized mayhem, the kind of woman who could throw a dinner party for 30 with 4 hours' notice and make it look effortless. Harold missed that. Missed her. Missed the way she'd touch his arm when he was spiraling, grounding him with nothing but pressure and presence. The evening light faded to dark, and Mercer Street emptied out the way it always did, everyone retreating to their homes, their lives, their private disasters. Harold sent Nellie and Junior home. They lived in the house on Maple Street, the house Marianne had loved, the house Harold couldn't quite bear to visit anymore and stayed to finish paperwork. The bookstore at night was different. Quieter, somehow fuller, The books seemed to press in closer, all those stories and lives and worlds compressed into paper and ink. Harold sometimes felt like he was curator of a museum dedicated to human imagination, which was a pretentious way of saying he sold books for less than Amazon and hoped for the best. He was finishing the deposit slip when he heard the sirens. Not unusual in Millbrook. It was a city of 60,000, big enough for crime, small enough that everyone heard about it, but these were close. Multiple units, the kind of response that meant something serious. Harold walked to the window and saw lights flashing down near the traffic circle, red and blue strobing against the buildings. He thought nothing of it. Went home to his apartment above a Vietnamese restaurant that made the best pho in 3 states. Slept poorly, as usual. Dreamed of Marion, as usual. Woke at 6 to the smell of broth and cilantro and the feeling that something had shifted, though he couldn't say what. The second day of the sale was Friday, and Fridays were better for business. Harold expected another good day. Instead, he got Detective Sarah Moss standing in his doorway at 8:30 in the morning, holding a cup of coffee from the shop next door and wearing an expression that suggested she hadn't slept either. "Harold Finch?" she asked, though she clearly knew who he was. "That's me. I'm Detective Moss. I'm investigating an incident that occurred last night, and I'd like to ask you some questions about your customer base." Harold's stomach did something complicated. "What kind of incident?" "The kind I can't discuss in detail. But I understand you had a clearance sale yesterday? Big day? Lots of traffic?" "Biggest day in months," Harold admitted. "Why?" Detective Moss was 40-ish, black, with hair pulled back and a practical bun and eyes. That suggested she'd seen too much and remembered all of it. She also worked part-time. Harold and the Millbrook PD couldn't afford full-time detectives anymore, so Moss split her time between investigation and teaching criminal justice at the community college. It was the kind of economic reality that would have been funny if it wasn't so depressing. "Did you sell any books about baking yesterday?" she asked. Harold blinked. "Baking? Like cookbooks?" "Specifically baking. Bread, pastries, that sort of thing." "I mean, probably. We sold most of our cookbook section. Why did you keep records of who bought what?" "No," Harold said slowly. "It's a bookstore, not a pharmacy. People pay cash, they take books, they leave. We don't exactly run background checks." Moss nodded, like she'd expected this answer and didn't like it. "Last night someone broke into Morale's bakery on 5th Street. Trashed the place. Destroyed thousands of dollars worth of equipment, dumped flour and sugar everywhere, even destroyed Mrs. Morale's grandmother's recipe book. The weird part? They baked a single loaf of bread, left it on the counter, and wrote chapter 1 in flour on the floor." Harold felt something cold walk down his spine. "That's disturbing. That's one word for it." Moss sipped her coffee. "Could be a coincidence. Could be someone's idea of a statement. But I'm talking to anyone who might have sold books about baking yesterday, just to see if anything seems off. You notice anyone strange? Anyone who seemed particularly interested in baking? Anyone who seemed angry, agitated, anything unusual?" Harold thought back to the chaos of yesterday, the parade of faces and transactions. "Detective, I sold about 400 books yesterday to maybe 200 people. They all seemed unusual. It's a going-go-tough business sale. People act weird. I understand." Moss pulled out a card, handed it over. "You think of anything, call me. Anytime. I mean that." After she left, Harold stood in the silence of the shop, turning the card over in his fingers. Detective Sarah Moss, Millbrook PD, with a phone number and email address. The cold feeling hadn't left. If anything, it had settled in deeper, like winter taking up residence in his bones. Junior arrived at 9, took one look at Harold's face, and asked, "What happened?" Harold told him about the detective, the bakery, the strange message in flour. Junior listened without interrupting, a skill he'd developed since Marion died, this ability to simply be present and quiet. "That's messed up," Junior said finally. "But it's got nothing to do with us, right? Someone bought a cookbook and went crazy. Not our fault, right?" Harold agreed, but he didn't believe it. And from the look on Junior's face, neither did Junior. The day's sale was not as good as Thursday, but respectable. They moved another 1,000 books, mostly fiction and biography. The Derrick kid came back and bought a book about the history of country music, which struck Harold as strange given Derrick's aesthetic, but who was he to judge artistic evolution? That evening, after they'd closed and counted the register, Junior said, "Dad, I need to tell you something." Harold looked up from the deposit slip. Junior's face had that expression, the one that meant serious conversation, the kind Harold used to have with Marion when deciding whether to refinance the mortgage or take Nellie to a therapist. "Shoot," Harold said. "Yesterday, I sold the book about Charles Manson to this guy. Middle-aged, nervous-looking, kept glancing over his shoulder. Paid in cash. The whole time, he's mumbling something about control and family and finally understanding. I thought he was just weird, you know. City's full of weird guys." "Okay," Harold said slowly. "This morning, before you got here, I checked the news. Last night, someone spray-painted helter-skelter across the side of the courthouse, in pink paint, and they left a note that said Chapter 2. The cold feeling became, "You're saying—" "I'm saying it's weird, Dad. The bakery thing was Chapter 2. The courthouse thing was Chapter 2. Both after our sale. Both connected to books we sold." "That's insane," Harold said, but his voice lacked conviction. "That's... People do crazy things. It doesn't mean I know," Junior interrupted. "Sounds paranoid, but what if it's not a coincidence? What if someone's acting out books we sold? What if they're going to keep going?" They stared at each other across the counter, the shop suddenly feeling smaller, the shadows deeper. Outside, Mercer Street was settling into night, the streetlights flickering on, Sister Clotilda's print shop dark, the traffic thinning to nothing. "We don't know anything," Harold said finally. "It's speculation. We tell the police we sound like conspiracy theorists. We could ruin innocent people's lives accusing them based on what? Buying books? That's not a crime. So we just wait?" Junior asked. "See, it says a Chapter 3? Harold didn't have an answer. Instead, he locked up, went home, and lay awake in the dark, listening to the sounds of the city breathing around him. Somewhere out there, someone was reading a book they'd bought from his shop. Somewhere out there, someone was planning something. Somewhere out there, Marianne was dead, and Nellie was angry, and Junior was scared, and Harold was failing all of them in ways he couldn't articulate. Saturday brought rain, that cold October rain that promised winter and regret. The sale continued. Everything must go. After all, and the customers came despite the weather, clutching umbrellas and tracking water across the worn wooden floors. Harold sold books on gardening, books on photography, books on World War II and quantum physics and how to train your dog. Each transaction Shelt waited now, pregnant with possibility. Who was he selling to? What would they do with these books? What chapters were being written? Nellie showed up around noon, soaked and furious about something Harold didn't understand and didn't have the energy to investigate. She took a position near the register, a rain-soaked prophet of teenage doom, and managed to insult 3 customers before Harold pulled her aside. What the hell, Nellie? Don't call me that. What the hell, Nellie? You can't treat customers like that. Why not? You're going out of business anyway. She said it with such casual cruelty that Harold actually flinched. What does any of this matter? Mom's dead, the store's dead, we're all just waiting around for the next shitty thing to happen. Harold wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, wanted to be the father Marion had believed he could be. Instead, he said, "Go home. I don't need your help today. Didn't need it yesterday either, but here I am." But she grabbed her jacket and left, slamming the door hard enough that Sister Clotilda looked up from her print shop window with an expression of severe disapproval. Junior appeared from the back carrying another box. "She okay?" "No," Harold said. "None of us are okay. We're just pretending better than she is." The rain continued. The sales continued. Around 3 p.m., a woman in a green pantsuit different from the green dress woman. Harold's brain was starting to catalog these people in uncomfortable detail, bought every book they had on flowers. Botany, gardening, flower arrangement, even a coffee table book called The Secret Lives of Flowers that Marion had special ordered and never sold. The woman paid in $100 bills and left without making eye contact. "That's weird, right?" Junior asked. "Everything's weird now," Harold said. That evening, after closing, Harold climbed the stairs to Delia's apartment with a tray of Vietnamese takeout from downstairs and a stack of westerns she'd requested. The apartment was dark except for one lamp, and Dahlia sat in her chair, the same chair she'd sat in for 3 years, surrounded by books like a paper fortress. She was 91 but looked older, or maybe younger, time doing strange things to her face. She'd been beautiful once, Harold could tell from old photographs, but now she was carved down to something essential, all sharp edges and knowing eyes. "Harold," she said, her voice surprisingly strong, "you look troubled." "Strange week," Harold said, setting down the food and books. "Strange how?" He told her not everything, but enough. The sales, the incidents, the feeling that something was connecting in ways he didn't understand. Dahlia listened without interrupting, her hands folded in her lap, rosary beads threaded through her fingers. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Then, there are more things in heaven and earth, Harold. Don't quote Hamlet at me, Aunt Delia." "Why not? Shakespeare understood. Stories have power. Words have power. You're a bookseller. You should know this better than anyone." "I sell paper and ink, that's all." "No." Delia said, and her voice carried weight that Harold couldn't quite identify. "You sell doorways, portals, possibilities. Every book is a world, Harold. Every book is a key. What you're describing, these incidents, these chapters, someone's found a key they shouldn't have. Someone's opened a door." "That's crazy," Harold said, but again, no conviction. "Crazy is just another word for things we don't understand yet." Delia picked up one of the westerns, ran her fingers over the cover. "Your mother always said you had a gift for not seeing what was right in front of you." "Marion wasn't my mother." "No, but she loved you anyway. God knows why." Delia smiled, taking some of the sting from her words. "Go home, Harold. Sleep if you can, but pay attention. The world is trying to tell you something." Harold went home, didn't sleep. Lay in the dark and thought about doors and keys and the way Marion used to organize books by feeling rather than genre. "This one's a Tuesday book," she'd say, or "this one's for people who are afraid of heights," and somehow it always made sense. Sunday morning, Harold woke to his phone ringing. "Detective Moss's number?" "Mr. Finch, I need you to come down to the station." "Why, what happened?" "There's been another incident. Chapter 3. Someone broke into Millbrook Botanical Gardens last night and destroyed the entire rose garden. 2,000 rose bushes, shredded. And they left something, a book. One of yours, according to the receipt we found. Harold's mouth went dry. I'll be right there. The police station smelled like bad coffee and institutional despair. That particular odor of bureaucracy seasoned with human misery. Detective Moss met him in the lobby, led him to a conference room where the book lay on the table like evidence of a crime Harold hadn't committed but somehow felt responsible for. The Language of Flowers, a complete guide to botanical symbolism. Marion had ordered it. Marion had priced it. Marion's handwriting on the inventory sticker. Do you remember who bought this? Moss asked. Harold looked at the receipt, crisp and thermal-printed and utterly unhelpful. Time stamped from Friday, 3:15 p.m. Cash payment. No name, no record, no way to trace it. A woman, Harold said slowly, the memory surfacing. Green pantsuit, paid in hundreds, bought everything we had on flowers. Can you describe her? Harold tried. White, 40ish, brown hair, medium height, medium build, no distinguishing features. The perfect description of someone completely forgettable, which might have been the point. We have security footage from the gardens, Moss said. Woman matching that description, wearing gloves, carrying garden shears. She spent 3 hours systematically destroying every rose in the garden. 3 hours, Mr. Finch. That's not vandalism, that's devotion. I don't understand, Harold said, though he was starting to. Why would someone do this? What does it mean? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Moss leaned forward, her eyes intense. Mr. Finch, I need you to be honest with me. Is there any reason someone would want to act out books from your store? Any connection between these incidents? Any history I should know about? Harold's mind raced. The truth sat in his throat like a stone, heavy and impossible to swallow. But how could he tell her? How could he explain the thing he and Junior knew, the secret Marion had died protecting, the reason they were selling everything and leaving Millbrook forever? Because the books in Harold's store weren't normal books. They were infected. Not all of them. Most were fine, normal, just stories and information and paper. But some of the ones Marianne had acquired from a dealer in New York, the ones that came with provenance and strange warnings, the ones they'd kept in the back room for special customers, those books had something in them. Some quality, some essence. That didn't just tell stories, but compelled them. Marion had figured it out too late, after she'd sold a book about heart disease to a woman who'd developed every symptom within a week. After she'd sold a book about mountain climbing to a man who'd driven his car off Mount Greylock. After she'd realized that certain books handled by certain people at certain times didn't just convey information but infected the reader with whatever they contained. She'd been trying to track them all down, trying to buy them back, when the aneurysm killed her. Sudden, violent, 3 days after she'd reread a medical text about brain hemorrhages. And now Harold was selling everything, trying to clear the store before anyone else got hurt, trying to disperse the infected books into the great anonymous stream of American commerce where they'd be just books again, just paper, just harmless. Except it wasn't working. Somehow, the books were finding people, or people were finding the books. And those people were acting out what they read, not because they chose to, but because the books chose them, infected them, compelled them into becoming characters in stories that hadn't ended. Mr. Finch? Moss's voice cut through his spiral. Are you all right? I'm fine, Harold lied. Just thinking. No, detective, I don't know why this is happening. I sell books. People buy them. What they do after is their business. Except it's becoming police business. I understand that. I do. But I don't have answers for you. Moss studied him for a long moment, and Harold had the uncomfortable feeling of being read, of being understood in ways he didn't want to be understood. But finally, she nodded. Okay. But Mr. Finch, if you think of anything at all, you call me, day or night, 'cause whoever's doing this, they're not done. They're writing chapters. Stories have endings, and I'd like to reach the ending before anyone gets seriously hurt. Harold left the station feeling like he'd swallowed broken glass. The rain had stopped, leaving Millbrook washed clean and somehow dirtier, the kind of paradox only October could achieve. He walked back to the shop instead of driving, needing the air, needing the movement, needing to not be trapped in his head with his thoughts. Mercer Street on a Sunday morning was quiet, almost ecclesiastical. The storefronts were closed except for a deli that catered to the after-church crowd. Sister Clotilda's print shop was dark, but Harold saw a movement behind the window, a shadow that suggested she was there, watching. Always watching. He let himself into the shop and stood in the silence, surrounded by books that might or might not be weapons, depending on who read them and when. The rational part of his brain, the part that had paid taxes and mowed lawns and raised children, insisted this was insane. Books were books. Paper was paper. What Marion had believed, what Harold feared, it was grief talking, coincidence talking, the human need to find patterns in chaos. But the other pot that had loved a woman who organized books by feeling, that pot knew better. Dad? Harold turned. Junior stood in the doorway, still in his jacket, holding 2 coffees from the place next door. Thought you might be here, Junior said. Thought you might need this. They sat on the counter drinking coffee, not talking for a while. Outside, Mercer Street slowly came to life. A car with T-tops cruised past the 79 Caprice Classic in mint condition, the kind of car people restored when they had more time than sense. A group of kids went by on bikes, one of them bouncing a basketball with that particular rhythm that defined American childhood. Somewhere, a dog barked. Somewhere, church bells rang. Somewhere, someone was reading a book that would change their life in ways they couldn't predict or prevent. She knew, Harold said finally. Mom knew what was happening. That's why she was trying to close the store. That's why she wanted us to burn everything and start over. I know, Junior said quietly. We should have listened. We're listening now. It's too late now. We've already sold. Harold gestured at the depleted shelves. Hundreds of books, maybe thousands. We've seeded the whole city with this, whatever it is, this infection, this compulsion. So what do we do? It was the question, wasn't it? The one Harold had been avoiding since Marion died, since the clearance sale started, since Detective Moss had shown him the book about flowers and he'd realized the scope of what they'd unleashed. We find them, Harold said. Everyone who bought the infected books, we track them down, we buy the books back, we end this before someone dies. How? We don't have records, we don't have names, we have receipts that say cash, no change in a city of 60,000 people. I know. Harold finished his coffee, the bitter dregs coating his tongue. But we have to try. We have to try. The shop phone rang, ancient and shrill. Harold answered. Finch's books? Harold? Delia's voice, thin and urgent. Harold, you need to come up here. Now. I found something in one of the westerns you brought me, something Marion left. Something you need to see. They took the stairs two at a time, Harold's knees protesting but his fear overriding everything. Delia's apartment was still dark, still book-fortressed, but now there was a sense of urgency to the space, as if the very air had tightened. Delia sat in her chair, holding a Western with a yellow cover, a Louis L'Amour maybe, and her face carried an expression Harold had never seen before. Fear. "She left a note," Delia said. "Marion, she hid it in this book, knew I'd get it eventually. She knew Harold. She knew what would happen." She handed over a piece of paper, folded and refolded, Marion's handwriting instantly recognizable. "Harold, if you're reading this, I'm gone. The books killed me just like they killed the others. Don't blame yourself. You couldn't have known. But you need to finish what I started. The infected books all came from one source. A dealer in New York named Solomon Tesla. He's been selling cursed texts for 40 years, spreading them through independent bookstores like ours. Every book he sold carries a piece of whatever darkness he serves. You need to find him.
You need to stop.
This at the source. The list is hidden where only you would look. Trust Junior. Protect Nellie. And Harold, I love you. I always loved you. Even now. Especially now. M. Harold, read it 3 times. Junior read it over his shoulder. Outside, the city continued its oblivious Sunday. People going to brunch and buying newspapers and living lives unaware that books could kill, that stories could infect. That reality was thinner than they believed. Where would she hide a list? Junior asked. Where only you would look. Harold thought. Marion's office? No, too obvious. Their bedroom? Possible, but Harold hadn't been there since she died. The garden? The attic. The self-help section, Harold said suddenly. She loved self-help books. She always said they were full of truth hidden in bullshit. If she wanted to hide something where only I'd look. They went downstairs, leaving Delia with promises to return. The shop felt different now, charged with purpose or maybe just Harold's racing heartbeat. He went straight to the self-help section, what was left of it anyway, and started pulling books. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Eat, Pray, Love. The Power of Now. Books Marion had read and reread, books with her margin notes and coffee stains and the ghost of her perfume. Junior helped, and together they went through maybe 40 books before Harold found it. Tucked inside When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chudron, a title that now felt like Marion's final jokas, a folded piece of legal paper covered in her meticulous handwriting. A list of titles. A list of customers, or at least descriptions. And at the top, circled 3 times, these are the dangerous ones. Harold's hands shook as he read. The Poisoner's Handbook, sold to Mrs. Chen, Pink Cardigan, Book Club, Helter Skelter, sold to Nervous Man, 40s Mumbly, The Language of Flowers, sold to Woman, Green Suit, Cash, The Art of French Baking, sold to Woman, Expensive Dress, Green, The Anarchist Cookbook, not yet sold, locked in back, The Tibetan Book of the Dead, sold to college student, philosophy major, How to Disappear Completely, sold to teenage girl, Angry September 15th, The Science of Fear, sold to part-time detective, female, black, early 40. The last entry made Harold's stomach drop. Oh shit, what? Junior leaned in, then saw it. Oh shit. Detective Sarah Moss had bought a book from their store. A book about fear. Before the clearance sale, back in September, when she'd come in looking for something to help with a criminal justice course she was teaching. Harold remembered now she'd been friendly, professional, had chatted about the decline of downtown retail while he rang her up, and now she was investigating incidents connected to their books while carrying an infected book herself. A book about fear. What would that do to a detective?
What chapter would she write?
We need to warn her, Junior said. And tell her what? Harold paced, the list crumpling in his fist. Detective Moss? Sorry, but that book we sold you is cursed and it's going to make you act out your worst fears? She'll think we're insane. She'll probably arrest us. But if we don't, I know. Harold forced himself to breathe, to think. Marion had left them a map, but what good was a map if they couldn't follow it? Okay, we focus on what we can control. These other people, the ones who've already acted. Mrs. Chen hasn't done anything yet, right? Maybe the poison book hasn't kicked in. Maybe we can get to her first. And the others? Harold looked at the list. How to disappear completely, sold to an angry teenage girl. Something cold crawled through him. When do we sell this? September 15th. That was before Mom died, Junior finished quietly. That girl's had the book for over a month. They both thought the same thing. Had she disappeared? Was there a missing person report they didn't know about? And more pressingly, why was Marion tracking sales from before the clearance sale? How long had she known about the infected books? The shop bell chimed. They both jumped, guilty as thieves, and Harold shoved the list into his pocket. But it was just Derek, the aspiring rapper, wearing a different jersey this one, said Rocawear, and carrying a notebook covered in lyrics written in silver marker. Yo, Mr. Finch, Derek said, his accent today sliding more toward suburban than urban. You got any books on, like, poetry? I'm trying to improve my lyricism. You feel me? Harold felt a hysterical laugh building in his chest. Here was Derek, oblivious to the darkness swirling around him. Just a kid chasing a dream that would probably never happen. And somehow that normalcy was both comforting and heartbreaking. Poetry section, second aisle, Harold managed. What's left of it? Derek nodded and disappeared into the stacks, humming something that might have been James Brown or might have been original, equally likely to be either inspired or terrible. Junior whispered, Dad, the list. Derek bought music biographies. Are those safe? I don't know, Harold admitted. Marion's list doesn't mention them. Maybe they're fine. Maybe the infection is specific, not universal. Maybe a crash from the poetry section, followed by Derek's voice. Yo, what the hell? They found him staring at the shelf where a book had apparently fallen and split open. Not just open split, the spine cracked so hard the pages had separated into two distinct chunks. And the title, visible in Marion's pricing sticker, How and Other Poems by Allen Ginsberg. That just fell, man, Derek said, backing away. I didn't even touch it. It just fell. Harold picked up the pieces. The book was old, a City Lights press edition from the 60s, worth maybe $20 in good condition. In this condition, worthless. Except Marion had marked it with a red dot on the inventory sticker, a symbol Harold now recognized from the list. Red dot meant infected. And Derek had been standing right next to it when it split. Derek, Harold said carefully, did you already buy a poetry book from us during the sale? Nah, man, I was gonna today, but I guess not this one, huh? He laughed nervously. That was weird. Books don't just explode like that. No, Harold agreed. They don't. After Derek left without buying anything, spooked by the exploding book, Harold and Junior stood in the wreckage of the poetry section and faced an uncomfortable truth. The books are fighting back, Junior said. Or fighting each other. Or something. That book didn't want Derek to buy it. Books don't want things, Harold said automatically. Dad? Junior's voice carried all the weight of the last 6 months, all the grief and fear and strangeness they'd been navigating. Books don't infect people either. Books don't make people act out their contents. But they do. So maybe they also have opinions about who reads them. It was insane. It was impossible. It was also, Harold was increasingly certain true. The rest of Sunday passed in a fog of anxiety and indecision. They sold a few more books. Harold checked each one against Marion's list first, relieved to find them unmarked and closed early, claiming illness. Not entirely a lie. Harold felt sick, feverish with information he couldn't process. That evening he sat in his apartment eating pho he couldn't taste and trying to make sense of Marion's notes. She had been systematic, tracking sales and symptoms, correlating books with behaviors. The woman who'd bought the heart disease book had died. The man with the mountain climbing book had driven off a cliff. A teenager who'd bought a book about suicide had tried to kill herself. Unsuccessful, hospitalized, recovering. The pattern was clear. Some books compelled action. The reader became infected with the subject matter, driven to embody or enact the book's contents. Not metaphorically, literally. And Marion, who'd been reading medical texts trying to understand the infection, had developed symptoms from those same texts. A brain hemorrhage described in detail, experienced in full. She'd killed herself by trying to save others, poisoned by knowledge itself. Harold's phone buzzed. Dad, turn on the news. Channel 7. Now. Harold fumbled for the remote, found Channel 7, and felt his blood ice over. The anchor, a blonde woman with the professionally concerned expression that local news required, was speaking. Breaking news from Millbrook Community Hospital, where an unidentified woman has been admitted after ingesting an unknown substance. Police are investigating whether this is connected to the recent string of unusual incidents plaguing our city. The woman, described as elderly and wearing a pink cardigan, is currently in critical condition. Mrs. Chen. The Poisoner's Handbook. Chapter 4. Harold called Junior back. We're too late. No. Junior's voice was firm. We're not too late. We know where she is. We can talk to her, find out what happened, maybe get the book back. Junior, she poisoned herself. She's critical. She might die. Then we need to figure out why before someone else does. A pause. Dad, I'm scared. But we can't just sit here. Mom wouldn't have sat here. Marion wouldn't have. Marion would have stormed into that hospital, demanded answers, fixed everything through sheer force of will and organization. Marion had been brave in ways Harold had never managed. Okay, Harold said. Tomorrow. First thing, we go to the hospital. Not tomorrow. Now. Tonight. Junior's voice dropped. Dad, no, he didn't come home. The bottom dropped out of Harold's world.
What?
She went out after you sent her home. Said she was going to a friend's house. That was 8 hours ago. She's not answering her phone. I drove past the friend's house. She's not there. Dad, the list. The book about disappearing. What if? Harold was already grabbing his keys, his jacket, his wallet. What friend? Where? Melissa's house? Over on Oak Street? But she's not there. And Melissa said she never came over. Said Nellie's been acting weird lately, weirder than usual. Dad, what if she found one of the books? What if she's infected? Harold's mind raced through the possibilities, each worse than the last. Nellie, his angry, grieving daughter, carrying a book about disappearing? Where would she go? What would she do? How to disappear completely? The title echoed in Harold's head. Not just physically disappearing, emotionally disappearing, psychologically disappearing, becoming invisible, becoming nothing, becoming the mountains. Harold said suddenly, Mount Greylock. She and Marion used to hike there. She loved it up there. Said it was the only place she felt real. That's an hour away, Dad. And it's dark. And raining again. I don't care. Call Detective Moss. Tell her everything. The books, the infection, all of it. She'll think we're insane, but I don't care anymore. Tell her to search the mountain. I'm going now. Dad? Wait, I'll come. No? You stay by the phone in case she calls? And Junior? Harold's voice cracked. If anything happens to me, burn the store. Burn every book we have left. Don't try to save them. Don't try to understand them. Just burn it all and walk away. Dad! Harold hung up, was out the door and in his car, not a Caprice Classic. Just a boring Camry with cloth seats and regret baked into the upholstery before Junior could argue. The rain had returned, that needle-thin October rain that made driving a prayer and visibility a joke. The drive to Mount Greylock took 4 to 5 minutes of white-knuckle terror, the windshield wipers beating their rhythmic prayer against glass. Harold's mind conjured every worst-case scenario. Nellie Tonelli lost, Nellie so disappeared she could never be found. The book in her hands, filling her head with methods and means, teaching her how to erase herself from the world. The parking lot at the mountain's base was empty except for one car, a beat-up Honda with a parking permit from Nellie's school hanging from the mirror. Harold was out and running before he fully parked, rain soaking him immediately. The trail was marked but barely visible in the dark, and he had only his phone's flashlight to guide him. Every shadow was Nellie. Every sound was disaster. Nellie! He screamed into the rain and darkness. Nellie, please. Nothing. Just rain and wind and the mountains in different silence. He climbed. His knees protested, his lungs burned, his heart hammered against his ribs like it was trying to escape. The trail was mud and loose rocks, treacherous in the dark, and Harold slipped twice, caught himself once, went down hard the second time, his phone skittering away into the underbrush. Darkness. Complete darkness. The kind that made you question whether you'd ever actually seen light, whether light was just a collective hallucination humanity had agreed upon. Nellie. And then, impossibly, Dad. Her voice small and scared and close. Harold scrambled on hands and knees toward it, found her sitting under an overhang, soaked and shivering, holding a book like it was the only real thing in the world. How to disappear completely. Dad, I can't stop reading it, she said, and her voice was wrong, flat, affectless. I keep trying to stop, but I can't. It keeps telling me how. How to disappear. How to become nothing. And I want to so badly. Everything hurts and Mom's gone, and I'm so angry all the time, and if I could just disappear, just become nothing, it would stop hurting. Harold crawled to her, pulled her into his arms. She resisted for a moment, then collapsed against him, sobbing. The bookshelf from her hands, and Harold kicked it away, sent it spinning into the darkness where books like that belonged. "You don't get to disappear," Harold said into her hair. "You don't get to leave me. I already lost your mother. I'm not losing you too. You hear me? You're stuck with me, and I'm stuck with you, and we're going to be miserable together until we figure out how not to be." "It hurts, Dad. Everything hurts." "I know, baby, I know, but hurting means you're alive, means you're real, means you matter." They sat in the rain, father and daughter, until the sirens came up the mountain, until Detective Moss and 3 officers found them, until someone wrapped them in emergency blankets and guided them down to safety. At the hospital, the same hospital where Mrs. Chen was dying from poison she'd prepared, herself, Harold, sat in the emergency room while doctors examined Nellie for hypothermia and shock. Detective Moss sat across from him, a cup of terrible coffee in her hands, listening to everything. Harold told her. All of it. Marion's discovery, the infected books, the compulsion, the list. He expected her to laugh, to call him crazy, to have him committed. Instead, she just nodded. "The Science of Fear," she said quietly. "I bought it in September. Read it in 3 days. Started having panic attacks immediately after. I've never had panic attacks in my life, Mr. Finch. But suddenly I'm afraid of everything. Afraid of heights, crowds, the dark, failure, success, everything. My therapist thinks it's job stress. But I know better now. It's the book. It infected me with fear itself." "I'm sorry," Harold said. "I didn't know. We didn't know. Marion was trying to stop it. Tell me about Solomon Tesla." So Harold did. The New York dealer Marion had bought from, the man who'd been spreading cursed texts for 40 years, infecting independent bookstores across America. The source of the infection. "We need to stop him," Harold said. "At the source, before more people get hurt." "We will," Moss said. "But first, we deal with what's already out there. Your list, these infected books, we find them, we contain them, we figure out how to break the compulsion. How? We don't even know how it works. Then we learn." Moss finished her coffee, grimaced. "Mr. Finch, I became a detective because I believe in answers. I believe every question has an answer if you're willing to look hard enough, think smart enough. This is just another puzzle. A weird one, a scary one, but still just a puzzle." A doctor appeared, young and tired. "Mr. Finch, your daughter's going to be fine. Mild hypothermia, some dehydration, but physically she's okay. We'd like to keep her overnight for observation, given the circumstances. Can I see her?" "Of course." Nellie's room was small and sterile, all beeping machines and antiseptic smell. She lay in the bed looking smaller than 15, younger than her anger usually made her appear. When Harold entered, she didn't look at him. "I'm sorry," she said to the ceiling. "I'm sorry I'm not handling this better. Mom would have handled it better." "Your mom would have handled it differently," Harold corrected, pulling a chair to her bedside. "Not better, just differently. Nellie, I need you to understand something. You're not required to handle your grief in any particular way. There's no wrong way to miss someone, to hurt, to be angry." "I wanted to disappear," she whispered. "The book said I could. It gave me instructions, and I wanted to follow them so badly, but you didn't, because you came." She finally looked at him, tears streaming. "Because you always come, even when I'm terrible. Even when I push you away, you keep coming." "That's what parents do," Harold said. "We keep showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." She reached for his hand and he took it, and they sat like that until she fell asleep, her fingers holding his like he was the anchor keeping her from drifting away. When Harold finally left the hospital, Nellie sleeping, Mrs. Chen stabilized but unconscious. Detective Moss promising to be in touch tomorrow. It was nearly midnight. The rain had stopped, leaving Millbrook washed clean under a sky so clear the stars looked close enough to touch. He drove to the bookstore instead of home, let himself in through the back, stood in the darkness surrounded by thousands of books, most harmless, some deadly, all of them just paper and ink until someone read them and gave them power. Marion's presence was strong tonight. He could almost see her in the self-help section, almost hear her humming James Brown while she organized by feeling rather than alphabet. I Feel Good, that was her favorite. She'd sing it while pricing books, her voice off CA but enthusiastic. I don't know how to do this without you, Harold said to the darkness. I don't know how to save them. Save us. Save any of this. The darkness predictably didn't answer, but the books seemed to shift in the shadows, settling into some new configuration that Harold couldn't quite parse. And maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was grief, maybe it was grief, maybe it was just human pattern recognition gone haywire. But Harold could have sworn he felt Marion's hand on his shoulder, her voice in his ear. You already know, Harold. You've always known. Stop the source. Burn what's left. Set us all free. His phone buzzed. Junior. Dad, where are you? Are you okay? Is Nellie okay? Harold typed back. Both okay. At the shop. Come here. We have work to do. Now? It's midnight. Now? Before I lose my nerve. Junior arrived 20 minutes later, still in his pajama pants, looking scared and determined in equal measure. Together, father and son, they stood in the bookstore that had been their family's life for 30 years. We're going to burn it, Harold said. All of it. Everything Marion marked with a red dot. Everything on her list. Everything that might be infected. We burn it tonight, and then we go to New York, and we find Solomon Tesla, and we end this. What about the store? What about the store is already dead, Junior? It died when Marion did. This is just cleanup. Necessary cleanup. Harold pulled out Marion's list, smoothed it on the counter. Your mother left us a map. It's time we followed it. I worked through the night, pulling books, checking Marion's inventory codes, marking the infected text with pink highlighter, because that was the only color they had. The anarchist cookbook, still locked in the back. A book about serial killers with a red dot. A text on psychological manipulation. A guide to creating alternate identities. A manual on building bombs. A coffee table book about tragic deaths in Hollywood. A cookbook focused entirely on poison herbs. 47 books total. Marion's notes indicated 47 vectors of infection, most already sold, some still on the shelf. They took the unsold once 15 books, red-dotted and dangerous to the alley behind the shop. Junior found lighter fluid in the storage closet, left over from summer barbecue Marion had thrown. Harold hesitated at the trash can they'd repurposed as a burn barrel, these books in his hands, thinking about everything they represented. Knowledge, stories, possibility. They're not books anymore, Junior said, reading his father's hesitation. They're weapons. You don't feel bad destroying a gun. Don't feel bad destroying these. Harold dropped them in. Junior poured the lighter fluid. They stood back, and Harold struck a match, just a match. Such a small thing, and dropped it. The books caught immediately, flames leaping up into the October night, pages curling and blackening and transforming from words into smoke. Harold watched his family's life burn and felt, surprisingly, relief. Sometimes the only way forward was to burn down what came before. "What about the others?" Junior asked. "The ones we already sold? We hunt them down?" Harold said, "One by one. We buy them back, we destroy them, we break the chain. And then we go to the source." They watched the fire until it died to embers, until the books were nothing but ash and memory. Then they locked up the shop, went home, and tried to sleep in beds that felt too big and lives that felt too small. Tomorrow, Harold thought, tomorrow they'd start hunting. Tomorrow they'd become detectives themselves, tracking infected books through the city like disease vectors. Tomorrow they'd figure out how to break a compulsion they didn't understand, stop an infection they couldn't cure, save people who didn't know they needed saving. But tonight, just for tonight, Harold let himself grieve. For Marion, who died trying to protect others. For the bookstore that had been their life. For the innocent days before he knew that books could kill, that stories could infect. That reality was thinner and stranger than anyone admitted. He fell asleep to the smell of smoke in his clothes and dreamed of Marion organizing books in heaven, red-dotting the dangerous ones, keeping God's library safe from infection. In the dream, she turned to him and smiled and said, "You're doing fine, Harold. Better than fine. You're doing what needs to be done." He woke to his phone ringing. Detective Moss, her voice urgent. "Mr. Finch, we have a problem." Mrs. Chen woke up an hour ago. She's talking. "And Mr. Finch?" Moss paused. "She says she's not done. She says the book requires 5 more chapters. She's asking for her coat and car keys and saying she has work to do. We've got her on a psychiatric hold, but Mr. Finch, I'm worried. If the infection is this strong, if it can override survival instinct, prison walls." She trailed off. "We need to move faster. We need to stop this now." Harold sat up, looked at the clock. 6 a.m., the sun not yet up, the city still sleeping. Somewhere out there, Solomon Tesler was probably eating breakfast, reading the paper, living his life unaware that Harold Finch was coming for him, unaware that the books had finally found someone willing to fight back. "I'm on my way," Harold said. "And detective, call Junior. Tell him to meet us at the station. Tell him Toy bring Mom's list and have..." Against a man who's been poisoning America one independent bookstore at a time. He hung up, dressed in yesterday's clothes, grabbed his keys, and paused at the door. The apartment was quiet, just him and the smell of pho from downstairs and the weight of everything that came next. "Okay, Marion," he thought. "Let's finish what you started." And Harold Finch, failed bookseller and reluctant hero, walked out into the October dawn to fight a war he didn't understand against an enemy he'd never met, armed with nothing but his dead wife's notes, his son's loyalty, and the desperate hope that stories even infected ones could still have happy endings. But first, coffee. Even revolutionary wars ran on caffeine. To be continued. The dealer's chest chapter 2, the drive to New York, took 5 hours, most of it in silence. Harold drove. Junior rode shotgun with Marion's list on his lap like a prayer book, and Detective Moss followed in her own car, a sensible sedan that screamed off-duty cop in a way that made Harold simultaneously grateful and nervous. They'd left at 7 a.m., after a brief stop at the hospital where Mrs. Chen remained under psychiatric hold, muttering about alkaloids and dosages, and 5 more chapters to complete the work. Nellie stayed behind with a promise to check in every hour. She was still in the hospital, technically, but the doctors were talking about releasing her later today if her blood work stayed stable. Harold had kissed her forehead before leaving, told her he loved her, in response that he chose to interpret as reciprocal affection. You ever been to New York? Junior asked somewhere around the New Jersey border. Once. With your mother? She wanted to see a Broadway show. Harold smiled at the memory. We saw Annie. She cried at the end. Not because it was sad, because that little girl who played Annie hit the final note so perfectly. Marion said it felt like being touched by God. Mom was weird about music. Mom was weird about everything. That's why I loved her. They found Solomon Tesler's address in the Bowery, a neighborhood that had been dangerous in the 70s, trendy in the 90s, and was now that particular Manhattan blend of expensive coffee shops next to dollar stores, luxury condos overshadowing bodegas that had been there since Koch was mayor, Tesla's shop, rare and peculiar books by appointment only, occupied a narrow storefront between a vegan bakery and a store that sold refurbished typewriters to people with more money than sense. The window display featured a single book on a velvet cushion, spotlit like a religious artifact. Harold couldn't read the title from the street, but something about it made his teeth ache. Detective Moss joined them on the sidewalk, having found parking 3 blocks away after circling like a shark. This is it, according to Marion's notes. Harold checked the address again. She came here twice. Bought books both times. The second time, she wrote in her journal that Tesler knew what he was selling and smiled when she asked about side effects. So he's complicit, or he's the source. Harold tried the door. A small sign read by appointment only in gold script that had probably been painted by hand sometime during the Kennedy administration. Junior found a buzzer, pressed it. They waited. A minute passed, then 2. Harold was about to press it again when a voice crackled through the ancient intercom, male and irritated. We're closed. Mr. Tesler, my name is Harold Finch. My wife Marion bought books from you. I need to talk to you about them. Silence. Then, Marion Finch, the woman from Connecticut, from the bookstore? Another pause. Longer. She's dead, isn't she? I can tell by your voice you've got that sound. The bereaved husband sound. I know it well. Harold's throat tightened. Yes. She died 7 months ago? The books? Yes. Come back tomorrow. I don't do walk-ins. Mr. Tesler, please. People are dying. People are being infected by books you sold. My daughter almost... His voice cracked. Please. We drove 5 hours. Just give us 10 minutes. The silence stretched so long Harold thought Tesler had hung up. Then the intercom crackled again. You brought cops? Detective Moss stepped forward. I'm Detective Sarah Moss, Millbrook PD. I'm investigating a series of incidents that appear connected to books purchased from this establishment. I'm here in an unofficial capacity, Mr. Tesler. No warrant, no recording, just questions. Cops lie. Yes, we do. But not today. Today I'm just trying to stop people from getting hurt. Another eternity of silence. Then the door buzzed and Tesla's voice resigned. 3rd floor, elevator's broken. And don't touch anything. I'll know if you touch anything. The stairs were narrow and dark, the kind that made you question fire codes and wonder about the last time an inspector had bothered to show up. The walls were lined with framed illustrations from old books. Medieval woodcuts, Victorian engravings, modern book covers that looked wrong somehow. like the perspective was off or the colors existed, at frequencies human eyes shouldn't quite perceive. The third floor was a single room that took up the entire level, crammed floor to ceiling with books. Not organized, not curated, crammed. Books in stacks, books in boxes, books balanced precariously on furniture that looked expensive once and decrepit now. A massive desk dominated the center, carved from some dark wood and covered in papers, invoices, and what appeared to be colored pencils scattered like a child's toys. Solomon Tesla sat behind the desk in a wheelchair, ancient and sharp-eyed and thoroughly unimpressed with his visitors. He was perhaps 80, perhaps 100, age, having done something complicated to his face that made it hard to estimate. He wore a cardigan that had been good wool once and was now mostly holes, and he held a cigarette that wasn't lit couldn't be lit, given no smoking signs everywhere but which he gestured with like it was. Marion Finch, he said, looking at Harold. She had good taste. Terrible judgment, but good taste. Sit. Not there, that chair's older than God and twice as rickety. There. Yes. They arranged themselves on various pieces of furniture that felt like museum pieces, except museums would have treated them better. Junior perched on what might have been a Chippendale chair, or might have been a very good knockoff. Moss stood, cop instincts keeping her mobile and alert. You know what you're selling? Harold said. No preamble, no politeness. You know these books are infected, cursed, whatever they are, cursed. Tesla smiled without humor. Such a medieval word. I prefer charged. These books are charged. With what? Intention, mostly. Belief. The collective psychic weight of everyone who's ever read them and brought their full attention, their full selves, to the experience. He gestured with his unlit cigarette. Most books, people read them halfway. They're thinking about dinner, about work, about the fight with their spouse. The words go in, but they don't stick. They don't change anything. But some books, certain books, people read them completely. They surrender to them. And those books, they remember. They absorb. They become containers for something more than just words. That's insane, Moss said. Yes. Doesn't make it less true. Tesla fixed her with eyes that had seen too much. You bought something from me too, didn't you? Recently? You've got the look, the fiance of fear, phobias and their origins. Moss's face went carefully blank. How did you... Because I remember everyone who buys that particular book. It's a popular one. People buy it thinking they'll overcome their fears, master them. Instead, it masters them, infects them, makes them afraid of everything, even especially the things they were never afraid of before. He took a drag from his unlit cigarette, the gesture so automatic Harold wondered if Tesla even realized he was doing it. You're afraid right now, afraid of me, afraid of this place, afraid you're going crazy. But you're not, you're just infected. Is there a cure? Harold demanded. Can you fix this? Reverse it? A cure? Tesla laughed, bitter and sharp. You think this is a disease? You think you can take a pill? Do some therapy? Make it go away? He wheeled himself forward, the chair squeaking ominously. These books are mirrors, Mr. Finch. They reflect what's already inside people. They don't create the poison, the violence, the fear. They just amplify it. Give it form and direction. Your wife understood this. That's why she came back the second time. She wanted to know how to contain them, how to keep them from spreading. And Junior's voice, quiet but urgent. What did you tell her? I told her the truth. There is no containing them. Once they're out, they're out. The infection spreads through reading, through proximity, through simply being in the same room with them long enough. The only solution is destruction. Complete, total destruction. Fire works best. Holy fire if you can arrange it, though regular fire will do in a pinch. We burned 15 of them last night, Harold said, in a trash can behind my store. Good. A start. Tesla wheeled back to his desk, began rummaging through papers with surprising dexterity for someone so old. But there are others, yes? Your wife bought 47 infected texts from me over the course of 3 years. She thought she could study them, understand them, maybe help people by carefully matching troubled souls with books that might heal them.
Noble. Stupid, but noble.
She was trying to help people, Harold said, anger flaring. I know. That's what killed her. Tesla found what he was looking for, a ledger, leather-bound and ancient. Your wife was special, Mr. Finch. She could feel the book's charge, sense which ones were infected. Most people can't. Most people buy a cursed book and think they're just unlucky or crazy when things go wrong. But Marion, she knew. She could feel the book's intentions, their hunger, and she kept buying them anyway, thinking she could save people from themselves. He opened the ledger, ran a finger down a page covered in cramped handwriting. 47 books sold to Marion Finch. 32 sold during your recent clearance event based on reports I've been monitoring. He looked up, and his eyes were suddenly soft, almost kind. You've created a crisis, Mr. Finch, a psychic epidemic. Every infected book you sold is now out there, seeking its proper reader, compelling action. Some will fizzle out, wrong reader, wrong time, wrong confluence of circumstances. But others will find their perfect match, and then people will die. The room felt smaller suddenly, the weight of books pressing in. Moss spoke, her voice steady despite the fear Tesla had diagnosed. You're telling us there's nothing we can do, we just wait for people to die? I'm telling you there's one thing you can do. Tesla closed the ledger, wheeled over to a corner where an old pirate's chest sat, the kind you'd see in movies about treasure islands and buried gold. It was wooden, banded with iron, and covered in symbols that made Harold's eyes water when he tried to focus on them. I have 23 infected books left in my inventory. The dangerous ones. The ones I stopped selling after your wife died, after I realized what was happening. He produced a key from his pocket, unlocked the chest. Inside, Harold could see books stacked carefully, each wrapped in what looked like oilcloth. The air around the chest seemed to shimmer, like heat rising from pavement. These books are different, Tesla continued. More charged than the others. More aware. Your wife asked me to hold them, to never sell them. She was planning to come back for them, to destroy them properly. But she died first. And I've been waiting, wondering if someone would come. If someone who loved her enough to finish her work would show up. He looked at Harold, and the old man's face cracked open with something that might have been grief or might have been relief. Take them all, and finish what Marion started. Destroy them, and maybe the others will lose their power. Maybe breaking the source will break the infection. You don't know? Moss asked. I've never tried. I'm a dealer detective, not a destroyer. I collect, I sell, I curate. But destruction? That's a younger man's game, a braver man's game. Harold stared at the chest, at the wrapped books that seemed to pulse with malevolent life. Every instinct screamed to run, to leave them here, to let someone else handle this. But Marion's voice echoed in his memory. You already know, Harold. You've always known. Stop the source. Burn what's left. Set us all free. We'll take them, Harold said. Tesla nodded slowly. Good, but be careful. These books, they're more than infected, they're intelligent. They'll try to influence you to protect themselves. They'll speak to you in ways that aren't words. Images, feelings, compulsions. They'll try to find the cracks in your armor, the soft spots in your psyche. And if they find them, he gestured with his unlit cigarette again. Well, you'll end up like the others, acting out the stories they contain. How do we fight them? Junior asked. Faith helps. Ritual helps. Company helps harder for them to get into your head if you're not alone. And for God's sake, don't read them. Don't even look at the titles if you can help it. The words themselves are vectors. They loaded the chest into Moss's sedan. It took all three of them to carry it down the stairs, and it felt heavier than wood and paper should feel, like it was resisting their efforts. People on the street watched them struggle. Onlookers with their phones out, probably filming, probably posting to social media about the weird people carrying a pirate chest in the Bowery. Before they left, Tesla grabbed Harold's arm with surprising strength. Your wife, Marion. She was good. Too good for this work. Too good for me, certainly. I gave her those books because she asked, because she paid, because that's what I do, but I regret it. I've regretted it every day since I heard she died. So you finish this, Harold Finch. You burn every infected book. You break the chain. And you save your daughter. You save your son. You save yourself. That's the only way Marion's death means something. Harold nodded, unable to speak around the grief lodged in his throat. The drive back to Millbrook was longer, heavier. The chest sat in Moss's trunk, and Harold swore he could feel it even from his car, could sense those wrapped books reaching out with invisible tendrils, seeking minds to infect, souls to corrupt. They arrived back at the bookstore just after dark, the October night cold and clear, stars visible above Mercer Street in defiance of the usual light pollution. Sister Clotilda's print shop was lit unusual for this hour, and Harold could see her silhouette in the window, watching them unload the chest. She came out as they struggled with it, her penguin frame backlit by street lamps, rosary beads clicking in her hands. Harold Finch, she said, her voice carrying that particular non-authority that made grown men stand straighter. What in God's name are you bringing into this neighborhood? Books, sister, Harold said, straining under the weight. Those aren't books. Those are abominations. She crossed herself, rapid and precise. I can feel them from here. They're wrong, Harold. They're against nature, against God. You need to get them blessed. You need to get them exercised. We need to get them inside. Moss interrupted, cop practicality, overriding religious fervor. Ma'am, with respect, we're kind of on a timeline here. Sister Clotilda's eyes narrowed, but she stepped aside. I'll be praying for you, all of you, and Harold. When this goes wrongin', it will go wrong. You come to me. You understand? You come to the church, and we'll fix it. We'll fix it with faith and prayer and whatever the Holy Spirit provides. They got the chest inside, set it in the back room where Marion used to do paperwork and drink too much coffee. The room felt different now, charged with the same energy that surrounded Tesler's shop. The books in the chest seemed to hum, a frequency just below hearing, but definitely felt. We should open it, Junior said. See what we're dealing with. Not tonight. Harold felt exhausted suddenly, bone-deep tired in a way that sleep wouldn't fix. Tonight, we rest. Tomorrow, we examine them, figure out what we have, plan how to destroy them properly. Moss nodded. I should get back to the station anyway. Mrs. Chen is being transferred to a psychiatric facility in Hartford. They think they can help her, but... She trailed off. I'll check in tomorrow. And Harold, lock that chest. Lock the room. Don't let anyone near it. After she left, Harold and Junior stood in the back room, staring at the pirate chest like it might sprout legs and walk away. Dad, Junior said quietly, I can hear them. What? The books. In the chest, I can hear them, not with my ears. In my head, they're whispering. Junior's face was pale, scared. They're saying my name. Harold listened. At first, nothing. TH. Walk away. Dad, Junior said quietly, I can hear them. What? The books. In the chest, I can hear them, not with my ears. In my head, they're whispering. Junior's face was pale, scared. They're saying my name. Harold listened. At first, nothing. Then, slowly, he became aware of it. A susurrus of non-sound, a chorus of voices that weren't voices, all speaking at once in a language that wasn't language. And yes, buried in the chaos, he could hear it too. Harold. Harold Finch. We've been waiting. We know what you want. We can help. We can fix everything. Out, Harold said. Out now. We're not doing this tonight. They left the back room, locked the door 3 locks. Harold added 2 more from the hardware store stock Marion had kept for emergencies and went home to their separate spaces. Harold to his apartment above the Vietnamese restaurant. Junior to the house on Maple Street where Nellie was supposed to be resting, but was probably on her phone, radiating teenage discontent into the universe. Harold couldn't sleep. The voices from the chest followed him home, whispered through walls and distance. Marion knew. Marion understood. She's not really gone. We can bring her back. Just open us. Just let us in. At 2 a.m., his phone rang. Junior, voice shaking. Dad, I tried to drive back to the shop. I was in my car, keys in the ignition, ready to go. I was going to open the chest. I was going to read the books. I don't know why. I felt like I had to, like if I didn't, something terrible would happen. Where are you now? Still in the driveway. I called you instead of driving. Dad, what the hell is happening to us? Tesler warned us. The books are protecting themselves. They're in our heads trying to make us help them. Harold sat up, turned on every light in his apartment. Don't go anywhere near the shop tonight. Stay home. Stay with Nellie. I'll call Moss, see if she's experiencing the same thing. He did. She was. The detective answered on the first ring, wide awake, voice tight. I almost drove there too, she admitted. I was halfway to Mercer Street before I realized what I was doing. These books, Harold, they're not passive. They're hunting us. They want to be read, to be released, to infect more people. And they're willing to use us to do it. What do? We stick together. Safety in numbers, like Tesler said. And tomorrow, first thing, we destroy them, all of them. We don't examine them, we don't catalog them, we just burn them and pray it works. But morning brought complications. Harold arrived at the shop at 7 a.m. to find Junior already there, looking like he hadn't slept at all. The back room door was still locked, all 5 locks engaged, but Harold could swear the chest had moved. It was still in the corner where they'd left it, but the angle was different, like it had turned to face the door. You feel that? Junior whispered. Harold felt it. A pressure, a weight, a presence that made his skull ache and his teeth hurt. The books were angry. The books were hungry. The books were aware We're burning them today, Harold said. We're ending this. But when he tried to approach the chest, his feet wouldn't move. Some invisible force held him back, and the voices in his head crescendoed. No, yet you haven't understood. You haven't understood. Open us first. Read us first. Know what you're destroying. Dad? Junior's voice far away. Dad, you're bleeding. Harold touched his palm, saw blood welling from a wound he didn't remember getting. And looking down, he saw more blood on his other palm, stigmata style, as if some invisible nail had pierced him. What the... The door to the shop opened. Not Junior. Not Moss. Sister Clotilde, still in her nun's habit, rosary in one hand and a small vial of water in the other. I told you this would go wrong, she said calmly. Step away from that chest, Harold Finch. Step away right now. I can't, Harold said, and realized it was true. His feet were rooted, his body refusing commands. Sister, I can't move. Sister Clotilde swept forward with surprising speed for a woman in her 60s. She sprinkled water from the vial over Harold Holy Water, he realized. The real thing from a Catholic church, and immediately the pressure released. He stumbled backward, gasping. Demonic, Sister Clotilde pronounced. That chest contains demonic influence. Not possession, not yet, but influence. The books are a conduit for something darker, something older. And you, Harold Finch, you were about to let it in. I wasn't going to. You were going to open the chest. You were going to invite the darkness in because it promised you Marion. Her eyes softened slightly. It's what demons do, Harold. They find your wound, your grief, your deepest want, and they promise to heal it. But they only make it worse. Junior helped Harold to a chair. The wounds on his palms were already healing, or maybe they'd never been real. Hard to say anymore what was real and what was the book's influence. Can you bless them? Harold asked. The books. Can you sanctify them, make them safe? I can try. But Harold, you need to understand. Some things are so corrupted, so twisted, that all the holy water in the Vatican can't redeem them. Those books, they might be past redemption.
Then we burn them?
Not yet. Sister Clotilde pulled out her phone-a-sight so incongruous, a nun with an iPhone, that Harold almost laughed. First, I'm calling Father Mendez. We're going to do this properly, with prayer and protection, and the full authority of the church. You Protestants always try to do everything yourself, and look where it gets you. She gestured at Harold's healing palms, bleeding like a badly managed saint. While Sister Clotilde made calls, Detective Moss arrived, followed shortly by Father Mendez Young, Filipino, radiating the kind of calm competence that Harold associated with people who'd seen spiritual warfare and won. Howley brought implements, holy water, blessed salt, prayer books, and a calm demeanor that made the whole situation feel almost manageable. Cursed objects? Father Mendez said after examining the chest from a safe distance. Not uncommon, more common than the church likes to admit. Usually it's jewelry or furniture, sometimes old photographs. Books are rarer, but not unheard of. The written word has power. Always has. Can you exorcise them? Moss asked. Exorcism is for people, Detective. For objects, we use blessing, sanctification, or destruction. Given the level of manifestation we're seeing, he gestured at Harold's palms, I'd recommend destruction. Immediate and total. How? Junior asked. Fire, but not regular fire. We need to ritually cleanse the space first. Protect ourselves. Then burn the books with proper prayers and holy water. It's a process. It takes time. And it's dangerous the entity or entities inhabiting these books won't want to be destroyed. They'll fight back. What kind of fight? Harold asked. Father Mendez's expression was grim. Psychological mostly. They'll try to turn you against each other, make you doubt, make you afraid. They'll show you things, tell you things, promise you things. The key is not to listen, not to engage. Just let me do the prayers, you do the burning, and we all get through this together. They prepared. Father Mendez drew a circle in blessed salt around the back room. Sister Clotilda set up candles, real church candles, thick and white, that smelled like beeswax and old prayers. Ma stood guard at the door, her service weapon visible on her hip, which Harold found both absurd and comforting. You couldn't shoot a book, but the weight of the gun seemed to help Moss feel more in control. Junior brought the burn barrel from the alley, set it up in the middle of the salt circle. And Harold, still feeling the phantom pain in his palms, unlocked the chest. The books inside looked normal. Just books, wrapped in oilcloth, stacked neatly. But the feeling when the lid opened it was like a window breaking, like a seal cracking, like something held back, suddenly rushing forward. No, 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 no. You can't. We're important. We're knowledge. We're history. We matter. The voices weren't subtle anymore. They were screaming in Harold's head, in everyone's head, based on the way Junior flinched and Moss put her hand to her temple. Even Father Mendez looked strained, though he began praying in Latin, rapid and rhythmic, a counterpoint to the book's psychic assault. Harold reached for the first book. His hand stopped mid-air, frozen. The book still wrapped, title invisible, seemed to writhe away from his touch. Or maybe that was his imagination. It's hard to tell the difference anymore. I can't, Harold said. I can't touch them. Then let me. Sister Clotilda stepped forward, rosary wrapped around her hand, and grabbed the first book without hesitation. It smoked in her grip, the oilcloth scorching where her fingers touched it, but she didn't flinch. Just toss it into the burn barrel with the efficiency of someone taking out trash. Holy women, Father Mendez murmured approvingly. They fear holy women. One by one, Sister Clotilda pulled books from the chest and threw them into the barrel. Harold counted 5, 10, 15. Each one seemed to resist, to pull back, and the voices in his head grew more desperate, more angry, promising, and threatening in equal measure. We can show you Marion, we can bring her back, we can make everything right, or we can show you horrors. We can make you do what we want. We can... Shut up, Harold said out loud, surprising himself. You're not real. You're just paper and ink and whatever psychic poison people poured into you over the years. You don't have power. You don't have agency. You're just echoes, ghosts, and I'm done being haunted. 20 books. 22. And then Sister Clotilde too pulled out the 23rd book, and everyone in the room gasped. The book was beautiful. Not just well-made or valuable, beautiful in a way that made Harold's eyes tear up, in a way that suggested some fundamental truth about the universe had been captured in leather and gilt. The oilcloth fell away, and the title revealed itself in script so elegant it hurt to read. The Book of Becoming, a complete guide to self-transformation. Don't look at it, Father Mendez said urgently. Don't read the title. Don't. Too late. They'd all seen it. They'd all read it. And in that instant, Harold understood this was the source. This was the text, the mother of all the infected books, the one that had started everything. And it wanted them to open it, to read it, to be transformed by it. Junior reached for the book before anyone could stop him. His face was slack, eyes unfocused, moving like a sleepwalker. I need to read it. I need to know. I need to become. Moss grabbed him, pulled him back, but Junior fought with surprising strength. Let me go. I need it. I need to understand. I need to understand. I need. The book fell from Sister Clotilda's grip, hit the floor, and opened. Pages fluttered without wind, settling on a spread near the middle. Words glowed within a light, pulsing like a heartbeat, and despite every warning, despite every instinct, Harold looked. The page was blank. No, not blank. The page was a mirror. Harold saw himself reflected in the paper, but changed, transformed, becoming something else. A better Harold. A Harold who hadn't failed Marion. A Harold who could save Nellie and Junior and everyone else. A Harold who could fix everything if he just read the instructions, followed the steps, let the book show him how to Harold. Detective Moss's voice cut through the fugue. Close your eyes. Now. He did, but the image was already burned into his brain. The better Harold, the transformed Harold, calling to him from the pages, promising him everything he'd lost, everything he'd failed to protect. Just one chapter, the book whispered. Just read one chapter and you'll understand. One chapter and Marion comes back. One chapter and Nellie stops hurting. One chapter and Junior is safe. Just one. Father Mendez was shouting prayers now, Latin mixing with Tagalog, a frantic incantation that pushed back against the book's influence. Sister Clotilda grabbed the book again. It burned her hand this time. Harold could smell flesh cooking, but she threw it into the burn barrel with the others, her face set with determination that bordered on fury. Light it, she commanded. Light it now. Harold fumbled for the lighter fluid, for matches, his hands shaking so badly he could barely grip them. Junior was still fighting Moss, trying to reach the barrel, trying to pull the book back out. The voices were deafening now, screaming rage and promises and threats all at once. The match struck. The flame caught. The lighter fluid ignited with a whoosh that sent heat rolling through the room. The books burned. And the screaming psychic, not physical, was unbearable. Harold fell to his knees, hands over his ears even though it didn't help, couldn't help. Junior collapsed too, and Moss and even Sister Clotilda and Father Mendez looked strained, their prayers faltering under the psychic assault. The books burned and burned, and as they burned, Harold saw things. Images, visions, memories that weren't his own but felt completely real. Marion in the hospital, reading a medical text, symptoms blossoming in her brain like poisonous flowers. Mrs. Chen in her kitchen, consulting the poisoner's handbook, mixing something clear and deadly. A nervous man spray painting helter-skelter on the courthouse, tears streaming down his face, unable to stop even though he wanted to. A woman in a green pantsuit destroying roses with garden shears, methodical and weeping, acting out the flower book's secret instructions. Nellie on the mountain, reading how to disappear completely, preparing to step off the edge and become nothing. And himself, future Harold, present Harold, transformed Harold, doing something terrible, something necessary. Something that would haunt him forever but had to be done because the books demanded it, because the infection required completion, because the vision shattered. The books were ash. The psychic screaming stopped so suddenly that the silence felt like violence. Harold opened his eyes. Junior was unconscious on the floor, breathing but unresponsive. Moss sat against the wall, blood trickling from her nose. Sister Clotilde's hand was badly burned, blistered, and raw, but she was already wrapping it in her rosary beads and muttering prayers that might have been gratitude or might have been curses. Father Mendez knelt in the salt circle, pale and shaking, continuing his prayers in a whisper. "Is it over?" Harold asked, his voice raw. "I don't know," Father Mendez admitted. "The books are destroyed, the source is burned, but the infection that's already out there, in the books you sold." He shook his head. "I don't know if destroying the source stops the spread, or if it's too late. We'll have to wait and see." They waited. Hours passed. Junior woke up with no memory of fighting Moss, no memory of trying to save the book. Moss's nosebleed stopped. Sister Clotilde's hand was treated by paramedics who asked no questions, good Catholic boys who understood that some things were better left unexplained. And Harold felt different, lighter, like a weight he'd been carrying since Marion died had finally lifted. The voices in his head were gone. The compulsion, the guilt, the desperate need to fix everything still there, but manageable now. Human-sized problems instead of cosmic ones. Over the next few days, they watched and waited, checked the news obsessively, waited for Chapter 5, for the next incident, for proof that the infection was still spreading. Nothing happened. Mrs. Chen recovered in the psychiatric facility, her compulsion to poison people evaporating as mysteriously as it had begun. The nervous man who'd vandalized the courthouse turned himself in, confused and ashamed, with no memory of why he'd done it. The woman who destroyed the roses was found wandering the botanical gardens, weeping, trying to replant what she'd destroyed. It seemed tentatively like destroying the source had worked. But Harold couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. Some piece of the puzzle was missing. Some horror they hadn't accounted for. On the third day after the burning, he went back to the shop to find it empty. Not just empty of customers empty. Junior was gone. The books were gone. Even the furniture was gone, the expensive pieces Marion had lovingly restored, the Chippendale chair and the mahogany desk and the antique bookshelf that had cost 3 months' rent. Just gone. Disappeared. A note on the counter in Junior's handwriting. Asterisk. Dad, I couldn't stop thinking about that vision, the transformation. The book showed me what I could become, and I need to know if it was real.
I need to know if I can become that person. I took some things to Salim, sorry.
I know they were Mom's, but I need money for the trip. I'm going back to Tesla. He knows more than he told us.
He has to.
I'll call you when I get there. Don't worry. Don't follow me. I need to do this alone. Junior. Asterisk Harold, read the note 3 times, his hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. Then he called Moss. Junior's gone. He went to New York, to Tesla. Shit. Moss's voice was tight. Harold, we burned the books. We destroyed them. But the visions they showed us, those don't just disappear. They're in our heads now. Seeds planted. Junior's chasing something that isn't real, or something that isn't real. Harold grabbed his keys. I'm going after him. Wait, let me come with you. You shouldn't do this alone. There's no time. He's got a 3-hour head start, maybe more. Every minute I wait is a minute you spend not being crazy, Moss interrupted. Harold, listen to me. You're spiraling. I can hear it in your voice. The books got into your head, too. Whatever you saw in that vision, whatever transformation it promised you, you're chasing it just like Junior is. The difference is you're chasing it through him. Harold wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but the words died in his throat because she wasn't wrong. He'd seen himself in that book, seen the better Harold, the Harold who could fix everything. And now Junior was gone, pursuing his own transformation, and Harold couldn't let him do it alone because what? Because he wanted to save his son? Or because he wanted another chance to look at those pages to see if the transformation was real, to become what the book had promised? I'm going, Harold said. Alone or with you, but I'm going. Then I'm coming. Moss sighed. Give me 20 minutes. And Harold, bring Sister Clotilda's rosary if she'll lend it. Something tells me we're going to need it. They made it to New York in 4 hours. Harold driving like the laws of physics were suggestions, and Moss white-knuckling the dashboard. Sister Clotilda had indeed lent them her rosary reluctantly, with dire warnings about not losing it, and coming to confession when this was over, and it sat on the dashboard like a talisman against whatever waited for them. Tesla's shop was dark when they arrived, the by appointment only sign joined by a new one that read closed indefinitely. Harold buzzed anyway, then pounded on the door when no one answered. Maybe he's not here, Moss suggested. Maybe Junior never made it. But Harold knew better. His son was here. He could feel it the same way he'd felt the book's presence, the same psychic awareness that had infected all of them. Junior was here, and he was in danger, and Harold was running out of time to save him. He picked up a loose brick from the construction site next door. New York was always under construction, always rebuilding itself, and smashed the window. The alarm didn't sound. No lights came on. The building was silent in a way that felt deliberate, carefully maintained. They climbed through the broken window, Moss going first with her service weapon drawn, Harold following with the rosary clutched in one hand, and a heavy flashlight in the other. The stairs up to Tesla's third-floor shop seemed longer than before, darker, the framed illustrations on the walls all turned to face the corner, like they couldn't bear to watch what was about to happen. The door to Tesla's shop was open. Inside, chaos. Books scattered everywhere, the expensive furniture overturned, colored pencils crushed underfoot. And in the center of the room, the pirate chest, the same chest they'd burned the books from, sitting open and empty. No, not empty. Harold approached slowly, every instinct screaming to run. Inside the chest, carefully arranged, were 3 objects: a shovel, a pickaxe, and a .45 record with a yellow label, James Brown's I Feel Good. Marion's favorite song. It's a message, Moss said quietly. Someone's telling us something. Or something, Harold corrected. He picked up the record, careful not to let it touch his skin directly. On the back, written in marque, the wigwam, sunset. Come alone, or he transforms. The wigwam? Moss pulled out her phone, started searching. That's a bar in Connecticut, dive bar on Route 44. Between here and Millbrook. Says here it's been closed for 5 years after the owner died in a suspicious fire. Harold's blood ran cold. Marion and I used to go there. Before we had kids, It was a good place, cheap drinks, live music sometimes. The owner was a woman named Dolores who wore her hair in Indian braids even though she was Italian. Marion loved her. Why would Junior go there? He wouldn't, unless someone told him to, unless someone told him to get the shovel, the pickaxe. Tools for digging, for uncovering something buried. Oh God, oh no. The fire that killed Dolores, it was never solved. Arson definitely, but they never found who did it or why. Marion was devastated. She went to the funeral, helped Dolores' daughter sort through the wreckage after, and she found something. Books, she said. A whole collection of rare books Dolores had hidden in the basement. Marion bought them from the daughter, paid too much, said they were important. Let me guess, Moss said. Those books came from Tesla. Harold nodded slowly. Marion never told me that directly, but looking back, the timeline fits. That was 3 years ago. Right when she started buying from Tesla. Right when the infection started. They stood in the wreckage of Tesla's shop, pieces clicking into place. Dolores had owned infected books. Someone had burned her bar, killed her, tried to destroy them. Marion had saved the books, bought them, brought them home, started the cycle that led to her death, to the clearance sale, to everything that followed. And now Junior was at the wigwam, digging for something, uncovering something, being transformed by something. We have to go, Harold said. Now, before sunset, they ran. The drive to the wigwam took 90 minutes through increasingly rural Connecticut, the landscape shifting from urban sprawl to farms and forests, civilization giving way to something older and less forgiving. The sun was already setting when they arrived, that October light turning everything gold and ominous. The wigwam sat at the end of a dirt road, a low building with a collapsed roof and burned-out windows. The parking lot was cracked pavement overtaken by weeds, and in the center of it all someone had been digging. A hole. Maybe 6 feet deep, maybe more. And at the bottom, Harold could see Junior, shovel in hand, covered in dirt, digging with the methodical rhythm of someone under compulsion. Junior! Harold ran to the edge of the hole. Junior! Stop! Come up here! Junior didn't look up. Just kept digging, kept cooping dirt, kept going deeper. His face was blank, eyes unfocused, and Harold recognized the expression. It was the same one Junior had worn when he tried to grab the transformation book. The same psychic infection, the same compulsion. He can't hear you, a voice said behind them. Harold spun. Solomon Tesler sat in his wheelchair at the edge of the parking lot, his cardigan torn and bloody, his face bruised, but his eyes sharp and aware. They've got him. The books. The ones that survived. The ones Marion saved from the fire. I thought we destroyed them all, Ma said. Weapon raised but uncertain where to aim it. You destroyed mine. But there were others. Dolores had her own collection. Books she'd been gathering for 30 years. When someone tried to burn her out to stop the infection, Marion saved them, rescued them, brought them home and added them to what she'd bought from me. The infected books bred Mr. Finch. They found each other. They merged, combined, became something worse than the sum of their parts. That's impossible, Harold said, but he knew it wasn't. Nothing was impossible anymore. Marion figured it out too late. That's why she was trying to track them all down, destroy them all. But she died first, and the books scattered in your clearance sale, spreading the infection. Except some didn't scatter. Some stayed behind. Some buried themselves. protected themselves, waited for someone desperate enough, infected enough, to come dig them up. Tesla wheeled closer, his face etched with what might have been regret or might have been satisfaction. Your son followed instructions, the books planted in his head. He came to my shop, attacked me when I wouldn't tell him where the wigwam books were buried. I held out as long as I could, but I'm an old man. Mr. Finch, old and tired and guilty, so I told him. And he came here, started digging. Digging for what? Moss demanded. For the transformation. Tesla pointed at the hole where Junior was still digging tirelessly, endlessly. The books promised him he could become someone better, someone stronger. But transformation requires sacrifice, requires death and rebirth. So the books told him to dig until he found what Dolores buried before she died. The book of becoming original manuscript, the handwritten text that spawned all the infected copies, the air source. We burned that book, Harold said. We burned it 3 days ago. You burned a book, a copy, a printed edition, but the manuscript, the original handwritten pages, those are what Junior's digging for. And if he finds them, if he reads them, he won't transform into something better. He'll transform into something the books need. A vector, a host. A way to spread themselves further than they ever could as just paper and ink. Harold looked at the hole. Junior was maybe 7 feet down now, still digging, and in the fading light, Harold could see something at the bottom. Something wrapped in oilcloth. Something that seemed to pulse with that same malevolent awareness the pirate chest had contained.
How do we stop him?
Harold asked. You can't, Tesla said simply. The compulsion is too strong. He'll dig until he transforms, and then he'll become the infection personified. He'll spread it not through books, but through touch, through proximity, through simply existing near other people. The perfect vector. There has to be a way, Ma said. There's always a way. There is one way. Tesla's voice was quiet. Someone has to take his place. Someone has to volunteer for the transformation, accept the burden willingly. The books feed on desperation and compulsion, but willing sacrifice that they can't process. That breaks the cycle. Harold understood immediately. You want me to go down there, to read the manuscript, to transform instead of him. Not want, Mr. Finch. It's the only option. You go down, you read, you transform, and in the moment of transformation, you burn the manuscript in yourself. Complete destruction. Final sacrifice. It's what Marion would have done if she'd had the chance. No. Junior's voice small and distant from the hole. No, Dad, don't. I can fight it. I can stop. But even as he spoke, his hands kept digging, kept moving, kept uncovering the oilcloth package. The compulsion was stronger than will, stronger than love, stronger than anything except, let me do it, Moss said suddenly. I'm infected too. The fear book. I'm already compromised. Let me go down, let me read it, let me burn. Detective, Harold started. I'm serious. I'm a cop. This is what we do. We take the bullet so others don't have to. And Harold, you have a daughter who needs you, a son who needs you. She trailed off. I have a job and a cat. The math is simple. The math is bullshit, Harold said. You're not doing this. Then who is? Moss challenged, because Junior's about to reach that manuscript, and when he does, we all lose. So, someone has to choose. Someone has to sacrifice, and it should be me. But Harold was already moving, already climbing down into the hole, already pushing past Junior, who clawed at him weakly, unable to stop digging but trying. God, he was trying. At the bottom of the hole, the manuscript waited. Harold could feel it even through the oilcloth, could sense the terrible awareness inside, the hunger, the promise of transformation. Above him, Moss was shouting. Tesler was calling instructions. Junior was sobbing, and my audience, trying to stop. Harold unwrapped the manuscript. The pages were old, yellowed, covered in handwriting so perfect it looked printed. And the moment he looked at them, the moment he read the first words, he understood. Transformation is death. Death is transformation. To become other, you must cease being yourself. To be better, you must destroy what you are. The words made terrible sense. Harold felt his mind beginning to shift, to change, to prepare for what was coming. The infection spreading through his neurons, rewriting his thoughts, making him ready to become the vector, the host, the thing the books needed him to be. And in that moment of clarity before transformation, Harold did what Marion would have done. He pulled out Sister Clotilda's rosary, wrapped it around the manuscript, and set both on fire using the lighter he'd brought to burn infected books. The flames were wrong, too hot, too bright, burning in colors that shouldn't exist. The manuscript actually screamed, a sound that was physical and psychic at once, and Harold felt the transformation reversing, the infection being burned out of his brain even as it burned into his flesh. His hands blistered. His face burned. He smelled cooking meat and realized it was himself. But he didn't let go. He held the burning manuscript and the burning rosary and let the flames consume everything. The book's influence, the psychic infection, his own desperate need to fix what couldn't be fixed.
Junior was pulling him up, Harold realized distantly.
Junior and Moss, both of them screaming his name, dragging him out of the hole while the manuscript burned below. Tesler was shouting prayers in languages Harold didn't recognize. They collapsed on the cracked pavement, Harold's hands ruined. His face blistered. The smell of burned flesh overwhelming. But he was laughing, hysterical and relieved, because the voices in his head were gone. The compulsion was broken. The infection had been burned away with holy fire and holy sacrifice. Junior was crying, holding him. Dad, oh God, your hands, your face. I'm okay, Harold managed. I'm okay. It's over. It's finally over. Moss was on her phone, calling for ambulances, for backup, for help. Tesler sat in his wheelchair, watching the flames at the bottom of the hole consume the manuscript, his face carrying an expression of something like peace. It's not over, Tesler said quietly. There are still infected books out there. Still people being compelled. But the source is destroyed now. The text is burned. Without it, the others will fade. Slowly, over time, the infection will weaken until it's just books again. Just paper and ink and stories. How long? Harold asked through gritted teeth, pain starting to register as adrenaline faded. Months, maybe years, but it will end. Marion's work is finally finished. The ambulance came. They treated Harold's burn second degree on his hands, first degree on his face, painful but survivable. They wanted to take him to the hospital, but Harold refused. He had work to do still, a daughter to get home to, a bookstore to close permanently, A life to figure out how to live without Marion's ghost hanging over everything. Sister Clotilda met them back at the shop that night, her face grave when she saw Harold's bandaged hands. "You burned my rosary," she said. "I'm sorry. I'll buy you another one." "Don't be stupid. You can't buy a rosary that's been blessed by 3 popes and carried through 2 exorcisms. But you used it well.
You used it for its purpose.
That's all any holy object can ask for." She crossed herself. "Father Mendez, and I will keep praying for you. For all of you. The infection may be dying, but the wounds it left will take time to heal. Thank you, sister." She surprised him by hugging him, careful of his burns. Marion would be proud. Foolish, reckless, and absolutely insane, but proud. That night, Harold sat in the empty bookstore with Junior and Nellie, who'd come from the hospital when she heard what happened to Detective Moss, who was officially off duty but emotionally invested. They sat among empty shelves and dust and the ghost of what the store had been. "We should probably talk about what happened," Moss said. "About the fact that books were psychically infecting people, and we just burned a cursed manuscript with a nun's rosary." "Or we could not," Harold suggested. "We could just let it be over. Let the official story be that we stopped a cult. A book cult. That's weird enough to be believable without being true enough to make us sound insane." "A book cult," Moss repeated, "led by a deceased bar owner and a wheelchair-bound dealer? Led by a charismatic personality we never identified who used books as recruiting tools." Harold corrected. Junior was a victim who was rescued before full indoctrination. Mrs. Chen and the others were early victims we saved. The end. That's a terrible story. That's a story that won't get us committed. They sat in silence for a while, each processing in their own way. Finally, Nellie spoke. "Mom knew this would happen, didn't she? That's why she was acting so weird before she died. Why she kept trying to organize everything, catalog everything. She knew the books would fight back." "I think so," Harold said. "I think she knew, and she died trying to stop it, and now we finally finished what she started." "So what do we do now?" Junior asked. Harold looked around at the empty store, at his burned hands, at his broken family, slowly healing. "Now? Now we sell the building, use the money to start something new. Something without books. Something safe." "Like what?" Nellie challenged. "What are we even good at besides books?" Harold smiled despite the pain. "I have no idea. But we'll figure it out together." Over the next few weeks, they tracked down as many of the sold infected books as they could. Most of the buyers were willing to sell them back. The book's influence had faded with the manuscript's destruction, leaving people confused and ashamed of their actions, but free. They burned each recovered book in a metal drum behind the shop, Sister Clotilda presiding over each burning with prayers and holy water. Mrs. Chen recovered fully, though she donated her entire book collection to the church and never read anything but newspapers again. The nervous Manson guy entered therapy and found medication that helped. The woman who destroyed the roses became a volunteer at the botanical gardens, trying to atone. Nellie started therapy too, actual therapy with a grief counselor, and slowly started to heal. Detective Moss kept her copy of The Science of Fear. Not to read, but as a reminder. She put it in a safe in her basement, surrounded by salt and blessed water, just in case. The fears it had given her faded over time, becoming manageable again, and she learned to trust her instincts without second-guessing everything. Junior took a gap year before college, worked at a coffee shop, dated a girl who thought his story about the book cult was wild but didn't quite believe it. He was okay with that. Some truths were too strange to share. And Harold? Harold sold the bookstore building to a young couple who wanted to open a yoga studio. He took the money and opened something new with Nellie, a small cafe that served Vietnamese food, licensing the recipes from his former landlord, and sold coffee and nothing else. No books, no literature, just food and drink and human connection. He named it Marion's, and on the wall behind the counter he hung a single item, a framed 45 record of James Brown's I Feel Good. Sometimes, late at night when the cafe was closed and Harold was alone doing paperwork, he swore he could hear Marion humming that song off-key and enthusiastic. And maybe it was his imagination, maybe it was grief, maybe it was just the memory of love refusing to die. But Harold chose to believe she was there in the music, in the memories, in the little cafe they'd built from the ashes of the bookstore, not haunting him, just keeping him company, the way she always had. The infected books faded from the world